guys, so today's video actually comes at the request of a viewer who asked if I would talk a little bit about the vibrational state and the sensations that lead up to the vibrational state. So I wanted to talk about this sort of from two different perspectives, the first of which being things that I have personally experienced, and the second of which being things that I've read and theories that I've read, things that make sense to me but that I haven't been able to personally experience yet. So the very first time I ever experienced the vibrations was when I was 13 years old. I woke up, I'm laying on my side, and I was in sleep paralysis. And this is the first time I had ever experienced sleep paralysis, and it was absolutely terrifying. It was horrible. At that same time, I feel like I'm being jabbed in the lower back right at the base of my spine by some sort of electrical force, and I'm being electrocuted. And I'm fighting against this sleep paralysis for probably a good 2 or 3 minutes, and then finally, when I start to regain movement, the vibrations start to fade. And when they finally die down, I am genuinely scared to roll over and see who's behind me that's putting me through this ordeal, who's jabbing me in the lower back with a cattle prod or something. I had no idea. So I finally, of course, do roll over, and of course there's nobody there. And I didn't experience that again for another 20 years. I never found out what it was. And so 20 years later, a couple of years back, I actually had that first experience, and it was strikingly similar. The waking up in sleep paralysis, the sensation that was pulsing through me, and finally, after 20 years, I found out what had happened to me back when I was 13. So that was my very first experience with it. Terrifying. As far as the sensations go, the vibrations themselves, it can vary in intensity. Everything from what feels like sort of the vibration of a cell phone, all the way up to like what I experienced when I was 13 and what I've experienced a few times since, where it's just crazy, insanely intense, very jarring, and almost to the point where it's painful. And actually, you know, one thing to note, and I haven't read this anywhere, so I'd be really interested in hearing if this happens to anybody else, but when I come back from an out-of-body experience, I actually tend to feel the vibrations, and it's always that very mild pulsating cell phone type vibration, and it actually pulsates. It's like bzz, 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 at regular intervals, and I can't get it to stop. And it actually gets to the point where it's almost annoying because I can't get it to build in intensity, so I can't get back out of body. And at the same time, I can't get it to turn off. You know, whether I roll around, no matter how awake I am, I can get up, I can go to the bathroom, I can come back to bed, and it's still doing that up and down my spine. Bzz, bzz, bzz. And eventually I just have to lay down and try to go to sleep, and when I wake up in the morning, it's gone. But I have never read about anybody else experiencing that, and I'd be interested in hearing if anybody else gets that when they come back from an out-of-body, or if they get that pulsating vibration in general, ever. That would be interesting to hear. Let's see, sensations that lead up to the vibrational state. For me, these were like a very rapid beating, intense heartbeat. That was primarily the main sensation. There's other things that are associated with your body falling asleep. There's like a heavy lead blanket feeling that goes from your feet up to your head. There's a pressure on your chest, specifically when the lead blanket feeling reaches your chest. And I guess, you know, if I were to guess, I would think it would be when your muscles in your chest are falling asleep and they're no longer supporting your rib cage, and maybe that puts some extra pressure on your lungs. So you feel that weight on your chest. And if what I've read is correct, that's probably what led to the myths and the legends about the old hag syndrome, and, you know, things actually sitting on your chest, and all these scary stories that you hear. I believe that is probably just due to your body falling asleep, to your muscles relaxing, and to that extra weight that's now on your lungs. And so it does make it a little bit more difficult to breathe, which is a challenge. When it becomes more difficult to breathe, it's harder to keep your breathing steady and natural, and then your body will realize that your mind is not asleep yet, and it'll ruin that state. So that it takes some getting used to, it takes some practice. But back to the heavily beating heart, the very fast, rapid heartbeat. I experienced that quite a bit when I very first started, and it's something I don't experience, or at least don't notice as much anymore. But, you know, if it's like the other sensations that come along with out-of-body travel, I would say that it matches the other sensations. So the vibrations themselves, they seem to have smoothed out over time. They're not as violent and jarring as they were when I first started. And, well, actually, it may be that they are exactly the same as they were, but it may be just my perspective that's changed. Thinking about it here as I'm talking, it's something that I actually look forward to now. It's something I anticipate and that I really have started to enjoy. And so maybe it's sort of like an acquired taste for certain foods, where at first, you're a kid and you hate these foods, and when you grow up, it's your favorite thing to eat. I don't know now that I think about it. It's quite possible that the sensation hasn't changed, but just my perspective has. But it doesn't seem as violent or rough, I guess. I guess the word would be. It's a little bit difficult to describe. So the vibrations themselves, the very heavy vibrations, it's a lot like, well, it's like being electrocuted. It's like hanging on to like a moving jackhammer or a chainsaw that's grinding through a tree branch. I've heard people say, I think I reached the vibrational stage, but I'm not sure. And what I would say to that is, it's a similar thing to what William Buhlman writes in his book. And he says, if you don't know if you've gotten there, then you haven't gotten there. And I would say that has been my experience as well. Regardless of the intensity of the vibrations, it's a very distinct sensation, and it's not something you're going to mistake for somebody else or for something else. And it's not something where you're going to wonder, have I made it or not? When those vibrations hit, you're going to know it, regardless of whether it's the vibrating cell phone feeling or the electrocuted by 10,000 volts feeling. So that's my own personal experience. The vibrations that actually lead to out-of-body experiences, those are the ones that tend to be the stronger ones. If they're more on the mild side or the moderate side, I tend to have to build them up in order to actually get out of body. And you sort of just do that through intent. You intend them to get stronger. You relax into them. You try to notice them sort of through like your peripheral vision, which is a weird thing to say, right? Because you can't actually see these vibrations. But what you'll find as you get into these states is that they're very, very delicate states. And even putting too much attention on something will actually stop the progression of the state and pull you back out of it. So you got to control your emotions, and you got to not be too excited, and you got to not be scared, and you have to not even notice too much or react to these vibrations or these sensations. So it's like you got to lay there, and you got to pretend they're not happening, and you just kind of say to yourself, oh, that's nice, and just sort of try to notice them like you're seeing something out of your peripheral vision, and just let them happen. William Buhlman actually uses the term bathe in the vibrations. Lay there, just enjoy them, just pretend you're bathing in them. Let them do their work. Once they're done, you get out of body and the adventure begins. So that is my own personal experience. Now, some things that are more theoretical, or things that I haven't experienced myself, are one of those things is something that Robert Monroe talks about. And so he actually talks in his book, Journey Out of the Body, about how he can oscillate the vibrations from head to toe. So he's moving them from his feet to his head, to his feet, to his head, up and down his body, and he can isolate these vibrations in different body parts, move them to his hand, move them to his feet. And that is something I have never had the control or the ability to do. And he does it all through just what he says is intention. He intends for them to go to some place, and he just moves them up and down with his intent. So that is definitely on my to-do list. That's something I would really love to experiment with more, but I have been unable to do that at this point. So some other interesting thoughts, and these are some more esoterically minded type thoughts. One of those is that rapid heartbeat, and the theory that I've read on this from the more esoterically minded books I've read are, one, that your heart isn't actually speeding up. If you were to put a heart rate monitor on, it would say your heart rate is just as same steady, calm heartbeat it was just a minute ago. And that it's actually not your heart beating at all. It's actually your heart chakra, and it's building up energy, trying to prepare your astral body for the projection. So I don't know how you prove that. I guess you could wear a heart monitor to bed. I've never done that. But that's one theory. Another theory about the vibrations themselves, which is a kind of an interesting theory, and actually would be quite amazing if it was true, is that the vibrations are always there, and that we just need to tune into them. So if you imagine this sort of like imagine like a radio station. So right now you're in the physical world, and you're tuned to that physical world radio station. And the next radio station over is the astral. So that's the astral radio station. And between those two radio stations is the static that you hear as you're moving between the stations. And that static is the vibrations and those auditory hallucinations, and basically that threshold that you have to cross to get to that other station. So the theory is that these vibrations are always there, that channel is always there, just like your radio station can always pick up those other channels, but you're focused on that one specific channel that you're listening to. And so all it would really take for you to enter the astral, or to see into the astral, or to interact with it in any way, it would be for you to be able to just learn to shift your focus from this physical radio station over to the astral radio station. And if you can imagine, if that were true, can you imagine what that would mean? That would mean if you could develop this talent, this skill, you could enter the vibrational state anytime you want to. You could pass right through it, and you could be in a waking state, sitting at work, and you could just take a view into the astral anytime you want to, and just see what's going on, and then phase right back again. That would be incredible. The only person I've ever read who claims to do anything like that is a guy named Tom Campbell. And Tom Campbell worked with Robert Monroe in the early days doing experiments with their sound technology and going into the astral and coming back and reporting on what they saw. And Tom Campbell actually has done some interviews. You can find some of them on YouTube. In fact, there's one of them where he's actually speaking at the Monroe Institute as sort of as a guest speaker. And he talks about how all he has to do is just shift his focus and shift his intent, and he almost never actually goes out of body anymore. He just basically shifts his intent, shifts his focus, and he can just glance into the astral whenever he wants to, and there's no reason for him to, completely leave his body at any point. So he's the only one I've ever come across that's actually made that claim. But it's an interesting idea, and if I ever get to the point where I'm even close to that skill level, I'll let you guys know how it works. So those are the two theories. A less esoterically minded theory on the heartbeat is that the reason why you hear it so loudly is just because your focus no longer is on the outside world. You've turned all of your focus inward, and so things like your breath seem very loud, things like your heartbeat seem very loud. You're very conscious of the blood circulation all the way through your body. You can feel the blood circulation in your feet and your legs and your arms, and things like that you don't notice during the day. And I've experienced this personally, just during things like meditation. When I very first start meditating, all the little noises that are in my house or, wherever I am, will make their way in and disrupt me, and I notice every single one of those. But the longer I meditate, the more that my focus turns towards the inside and less outside, and eventually I'm blocking out all of these external noises and external distractions. And as I do that, where I wouldn't have even been able to hear my heartbeat if I wanted to at the beginning, at the end I can hear my heartbeat very clearly, and it's just because my focus is pointed in a different direction. So maybe that's a more likely scenario. I don't have an opinion one way or the other on chakras. I haven't personally had any experience to be able to back those up, back up the idea of chakras in general. If you've never heard of chakras, the idea is that chakras are your primary energy centers that go up your spine and into your head. And this idea has been around for a really long time. And the energy that goes up your spine is called Kundalini, and it's supposedly in the form of a serpent, so like an energy serpent that coils around your central channel and goes up through your chakras from your root, being the base of your spine, all the way up to the top of your head. So like I said, I don't have an opinion on that one way or the other, but I wouldn't mind hearing your opinions if you've got experience with energy work or things that are related to that. I think that they're all kind of tied together somehow. And my thought on that comes from reading Robert Bruce. And Robert Bruce does a lot of energy work, talks a whole lot about Kundalini raising and things like that. And his description of Kundalini raising is actually strikingly similar to what I feel when the vibrations rise from the bottom of my spine up to my head when I'm projecting. So it's probably the same thing, just a different word for the same thing, just depending on how you look at the world. So let's see, what else? I think that pretty much covers the vibrations in a nutshell. I know I went in like 15 different directions, so hopefully this was helpful for you folks. If you've got any questions, things that I didn't cover, feel free to post them down in the comments below. Like always, I will have a blog post. Link will be down below, and I'll cover this stuff in writing in case you feel like reading it, or just interacting in a different format. So I will record some more soon, and I hope you guys enjoyed. Talk to you guys later.